April 18th, 1980. Independence Day for Zimbabwe. This year, it marks 30 years. A British prince lowering the Union flag, marking the end of the road for Africa's last British colony. This followed decades of civil war in which more than 27,000 lives were lost. Independence came after many hours of negotiations at London's Lancaster House to thresh out a deal between former colonial power Britain and the factions in the then Rhodesia. This paved the way for a new country with new hopes and ideals for its people, Zimbabwe. At independence, the new leader, Robert Mugabe, started in reconciliatory fashion, inviting whites to help rebuild Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe became the model on which most African countries began basing their economies. The economy grew, education and health boomed, and Zimbabweans became amongst the healthiest and most literate on the continent. But not everything was rosy. The new government clamped down on the Ndebele people, accusing them of harboring dissidents. In the meantime, through resources and agriculture, the economy was ticking over nicely. In 1990, the British government pledged to pay for land redistribution. This from a clause in the 1979 Lancaster House Agreement, whereby a 10-year moratorium was put on the land issue, and thereafter the former colonial power was expected to pay up. But by 1995, the British government was stalling on the land issue. And as Britain changed government in 1997, the new Labour Foreign Secretary wrote to Mugabe exonerating Britain from any previous agreements signed by the Conservatives. There were also other changes in President Mugabe's private life. In 1992, his first wife Sally died. Mugabe then married his personal secretary, Grace Marufu, in 1996. Her conspicuous love of the good life was to later draw much international condemnation. This helped fuel political opposition. Later that year, civic groups began to flex more muscle and organize what was to become the opposition MDC. By 1997, the post-independence euphoria had all but run out. The economy began to unravel. The Zimbabwean government started writing checks it couldn't cash. It had to fund an expensive war in the Democratic Republic of Congo, costing up to $1 million a day, and the promised compensation to the restless ranks of war veterans. It strained national coffers and brought about a run on the Zimbabwe dollar and the first worrying signs of economic collapse in the shape of food and petrol riots. This one-time exporter of food was now dependent on foreign aid. Mugabe knew that this was the time to tighten his grip on power. It all came to head in 2000 when, after years of unrest, Mugabe called referendum over the constitution. To his surprise, Zimbabweans voted overwhelmingly to limit the president's power. Accusations soon came from Mugabe against the white farmers that they were funding the referendum. The order went out for armed groups of war veterans to start taking farms from the 4,000 mainly white commercial farmers. Farming created most of Zimbabwe's wealth, and its decimation dealt a blow to an already tottering economy. These were the days of hyperinflation and the extreme devaluation of the Zimbabwe dollar. Out of the maelstrom, the MDC began making inroads, and led by Morgan Tsvangirai, began its political apprenticeship. It all came to head in April 2008, in a parliamentary election that the MDC appeared to have won hands down. But instead, a compromise power-sharing government of national unity was formed. MDC candidates took influential positions like finance. The worthless Zimbabwe dollar was scrapped in favor of the greenback and other currencies. Supermarket shelves were restocked. But issues such as the government's proposed indiginization policy still remain.
I, Morgan Richard Tsvangirai, do swear.
And on February the 11th, 2009, Morgan Tsvangirai was sworn in by his bitter rival as the Prime Minister. The relationship has proved a very rocky one, but through it all, the man who continues to preside over Independence Day celebrations is President Robert Mugabe.